Hey, buenas tardes, buenas noches, buenos dias, depending where you're watching this from. It's Wednesday evening, and I am back live. No technical difficulties, no cake emergencies. It's just a regular Wednesday. My name is Adelia Aborashade, and this is my channel, Picky Girl Travels the World. I am the Picky Girl, and I be traveling. But right now, I am home in Mexico City. This is where I have lived for a few years. I left the US 7, 8 years ago. Y'all know math is not my ministry. It's been a minute, and I am out here living my best life. And if you are a Black woman, I want to help you live yours as well. That on this channel, that's part of what we do. We talk about life abroad, we talk about travel, particularly solo travel, and we talk about how to live life on your terms, which kind of brings me to my guest tonight. She is definitely somebody who has been doing that and looking good while she's doing it. Making her Instagram is such that, she will definitely inspire you to get out there and get on a yacht and be in a bikini and whatnot. So thank you for joining me tonight live. I see y'all in the chat. Hey. And if you happen to be watching this from the future, hey to you too. Uh, comment and let us know where you're watching from. And so without further ado, let me bring my guest on. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Now, some of y'all might be thinking, she looks familiar. Wasn't she on this channel before? You would be right. I think it was July 2022 is
Yes,
when you came on the channel previously. And so for the folks who haven't seen that video or don't remember it, would you introduce yourself?
sure. My name is Lila, and I have been a digital nomad since 2020. I left right after the first Exodus Summit as I was inspired by all the ladies. Thought I was going to be a food blogger and didn't really intend to be a digital nomad, but that just became a thing. And so I've been doing that and working remotely for the last almost 4 years. And I'm originally from Michigan, and yeah, I'm currently. I do want to say, for people who have been following me or people who have seen me before, I am kind of in the process of just revamping my online presence, my YouTube to be more lifestyle focused, especially since now I'm settled somewhere, which I'm sure we'll get into. So definitely encourage everybody to follow me on YouTube and for Instagram if you want to keep up with what I got going on. And I'll still be talking about all of my travels because I always love doing that too. So
We definitely both share the inability to sit down somewhere for too long.
it's
There is a
hard.
link in the description of this video to Laila's YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe there. And hey, if you're not subscribed to this channel, you should absolutely do that. If you want YouTube to know, hey, bring more videos like this with fabulous Black women in them to my feed, you got to tell them, and you tell them by subscribing. Now, I forgot about you. The whole plan was you were going to be a food blogger. Now, was that idea, was that based on, oh, I'm going to leave the US and I'm going to go do some things and I'll blog about my food there? Or was that something you were already kind of doing before while you were still stateside?
So I wasn't really doing it before. I think I had kind of just gotten into like going to restaurants and maybe sometimes like creating dishes, but mainly wanting to talk about like restaurants. And I feel like people looking for good restaurants, especially when they travel, is always a thing. And then once people know that you know good food, they kind of are always asking you. So I thought that I would do that. And really, I think that it was kind of like I really just like eating. I really just like eating. I like pretty food and I like for other people to see the pretty food. Um, but really, I think in the beginning, I felt like I had to put some purpose around leaving the country. So I think it was less about like, oh, I really want to go do this, and it was more about, well, people are going to be asking why I'm going, and I have to have a reason why I'm going, and that quickly changed as soon as I got there.
Okay. So what was the reason? This is 2020. This is after lockdown had started, correct?
Yes.
What take us back to that? Like what made you think I need to raise up out of here?
Yeah, I think honestly, I was just bored. I was bored with just a very routine life, and I think COVID really highlighted that. I saw somebody that is in the chat from Michigan. Anybody that was in Michigan in 2020 knows, like, we were locked down for real. Like, we didn't have that play lockdown that was going on in other parts of the country. It was the dead of winter, and literally everything was closed except for you could go to the grocery store, and that was it. So I mean, and I was living alone. I didn't have a pet or anything. We weren't even supposed to be like visiting people. Like the police could have stopped you on the street. So like I couldn't even go kick it with my brother and stuff. So I think it gave me all this time to be with myself, which I was very comfortable being to myself, but I realized, like, in the absence of the routine I had created, I was bored. And I was so consumed at the time with like one thing that I just really let it consume me because I didn't have anything else interesting that I felt was going on. And then when I started to think about, well, what could I be doing or what would I be doing? It was like, I think I was also waiting on other people to be available to go with me or be a part of whatever. And then, so yeah, I think when I attended the Exodus Summit, that was like, this was all in that same maybe, 3 to 6 month period where I was like, what am I doing here? What's going to be next? And it never dawned on me to leave the country until I attended this summit. And at that time, this was the very first year. And I mean, it was you remember it was 7 days.
Yeah, it was incredible.
It was. And I had never seen Black women. I just didn't know it was anybody who's ever heard me tell this story knows I tell it the exact same way every time. But like, I didn't know it was something that was available to us. So when I saw all these Black women living in every corner of the globe, some single, some married, some with kids, some with families, working, not working, working remotely, running businesses, retirees, whatever, I was like, wow, that's dope. And everybody has so much joy. And so I just was like, I think I could do it. And there was really nothing holding me back. So really it was just more of like a, let's go try it and see it. And let's call it a venture into food blogging and just see if we like it. And I didn't really even know what like digital nomad was because that wasn't really like the context of the summit. So I was just thinking like, I'm going to go to Istanbul for a couple months, eat food, and then I'll go back to Florida because that was kind of like going to be my base in the States because my parents lived there. So I was like, I'll go back to Florida and just, figure it out. And then, once I got to Turkey, I was just there. So 2 months became 4 months, 6 months, 10 months. And then
She
my mom,
went to Turkey and she didn't want to come home.
yeah,
Basically,
my mom was like, are
that's
you
what she
coming
said.
back? So yeah, that was kind of the reason.
It is
Oh,
very true, and Joyful One talks about this, that the beginning of COVID, particularly when we were in various stages of lockdown, it made and this is what I'm hearing you say as well, it made many of us stop. Many of us had not just stopped and had nothing but time to sit alone with ourselves,
yeah.
because that is a privilege. We didn't have it. And then once you got that time and you start looking around and you start really thinking about like, oh, so this is what I be doing?
Hmm.
How do I feel about this? Is this what I thought my life was going to be? And I think, I've never talked to Rashida and Stephanie. It's Rashida Dow and Stephanie Perry. For those of you who are not familiar with Exodus Summit, when they decided to put it on, I never asked if the fact that it was during that time in the midst of the height of COVID, because COVID is still a thing, y'all. Um, if that was part of what had pushed them to do it. But I think the combination of the two, you are not alone. There are so many Black women who started to ask themselves some questions, maybe questions they didn't have answers to, or questions they didn't particularly like the answers they had. Then, coupled with this summit for and by Black women who wanted to take a sabbatical, who wanted to move abroad, who wanted to travel. And like you said, it opened up all of these ideas, these possibilities that previously, you know, I have no idea how old you are. You know that? But I'm going to assume you're a little younger than me. But when we were kids, like this was not the idea that as a Black woman from the United States, you just gonna be out here in the international streets
Oh no.
indefinitely,
Alone?
coming and going when alone, coming and going where you want, not just, hey, for the vacation this year, me and my girls are getting together and going somewhere. Like that was so out of the realm of possibility. So I know there are so many people who were also inspired that way. Francis said that first summit was life changing for sure. And I'll just add this, if you're watching this video and you're like, what are y'all talking about? Exodus Summit, what? Go to exodussummit.com. If you are on Facebook, search Exodus Summit in the groups. You will find your place. You will find your people.
Yeah.
Okay. So you you decided on Turkey. Why?
I decided on turkey because one, there, so I will say two things. There's always going to be two answers with me, I think. One, I think I'm a very spiritual person, and I think that things come to me as they are supposed to just come to me. And I then try to make sense of it. So I think one, turkey came to me. Turkey came to me, and people started telling me about turkey. And then in my mind, I was kind of like, let me compare it to a couple of other places, but also it was COVID. So there was only so many places that were open to US citizens to anyway. So everybody was going to Mexico. So I was like, I don't want to go to Mexico. So I was debating between Croatia, Turkey, and Jamaica because all three places kind of had like unique cuisine that I could really dive into the culture and the food. And they had beaches and outdoor nature stuff I could do. So I was like, and then so much stuff was like just synergizing around Turkey. And then it kind of was just between Turkey and Croatia. And I just kind of flipped a coin in my mind because I was on the plane leaving Michigan going to Florida. And I was like, if I don't have the plane ticket bought by the time I get there, my mom's going to try to talk me out of it. So I was on the plane like, we just got to make a decision. And I kind of just picked Turkey.
Okay. All right. And, this is not a situation because were y'all remote because of the pandemic, or were you already working remote?
So we were kind of hybrid already because our company has multiple companies around the country. So, and I work in IT. So in the IT space, we were very much hybrid, maybe like 2 days in, 3 days home, 3 days in, 2 days home, or whatever, just depending on what we needed to be doing because so much of the nature of our work would be just coming to the office to be on the phone with people in Cali or somewhere else. So, it was a natural transition for us. And so COVID definitely was the thing that took us fully remote because they immediately wanted to send us home. And so we were home for maybe 2 years before they finally became a work choice company. And at that point, they were like, we're not planning to open up any additional offices, but if you would like somewhere to go, we will figure out somewhere to send you for the day. And then we still have
Ooh,
our
I love
headquarters.
that work choice. I've not heard that terminology before. And what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, a work choice company is one that they pretty much are not requiring anybody to come into the office. But if you, as an individual, feel like I work better in an office atmosphere, or my team needs to come together once a month in an office atmosphere, they will set up a space for you in the office so that you can come and go based on your needs to be in an office.
That is very cool. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it
Okay.
works out really.
Now, we're not going to re-dig into your experience in Turkey. We talked about that. I just dropped a link in the chat, and I will also put a link to this in the description of the video. When we talked previously in 2022 about Laila's experience living in Turkey, traveling Turkey, eating in Turkey, because she was out there doing all of the things.
All the things.
Okay. All right. So you said previously you didn't consciously set out to be a digital nomad. You just kind of was like, I'm getting out of the US. I got this job that they're like, okay, go do whatever. We don't care as long as you work. Um, and or when did you figure out, oh, that's what it's called, what I'm doing?
Yeah. I think in 2020 when I was in Turkey, because so I was in Istanbul for 4 months because the country was still on lockdown too. So I couldn't really leave Istanbul and like freely be moving around. So I was in Istanbul for 4 months, and then I went to southern Turkey. So what would happen is every time I would get somewhere, someone would tell me like, "Oh, you need to see this place. You have to go stay here." So then I would go stay there for a month or whatever. So that was kind of when, and so as I would be meeting people in some of these places that were like digital nomads are kind of common, I started hearing the term, and then people would say, "Oh, like you're a digital nomad." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess so." I mean, because up to that point, I was like, I'm just here in Turkey. Like, I'm just here in Turkey and I don't really know when I'm leaving. So I guess that's what they call it. So yeah.
All right. And so, spoiler, she did not stay just in Turkey. Do you even remember all of the places that you went? Where did
I
you go?
I do. I do, but there was a lot of bouncing. So like there's a lot of like trips mixed in with long stays, mixed in with house sitting, mixed in with vacation, mixed in with girls meetup and all of this stuff. So really I think in terms of like places that I can say like, okay, I stayed there long enough, and if I went back I would know my way around and I have friends there and community, definitely the Netherlands, Turkey, Mexico. And then everywhere else, I mean, it's pretty Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Scotland, Prague, Cyprus, Belize. I'm probably missing some
I
places.
feel like you're forgetting something.
I feel London. I feel like I'm missing Paris. Yeah, Egypt. Yeah, it's been a lot of places. So, which was part of the reason why I was like ready to settle down, because like the experiences just start coming so fast that you get to a place where like, where was I? Like I last year, 2022, really that started because I spent so much time only in Turkey. I think that was good for me, right? Like 4 months in Istanbul, 1 month here, 2 months here. Like that definitely was a much better pace for digital nomading around. And also I wasn't trying to like travel from those places either. Like I was in Istanbul doing Istanbul. So, after that, like bopping between all these places was like, oh, somebody wants to meet up over here. Oh, somebody I met in this country now wants to, let's go see that country together. So there was just a lot of that. And you start to get a little discombobulated, and you're also not able to, well, I won't say you, I would say I was not able to fully appreciate what I was experiencing.
Okay, so is there a country or a city that stands out to you as like this was a really good location for me to work from as a digital nomad?
Ooh, definitely Amsterdam. Amsterdam, Istanbul, Fethiye, all the places, Antalya, all the places in southern Turkey. Um, I mean, I kind of want to say everywhere that I've been is because I have to work. So like being able to be a digital nomad there is kind of like the standard requirement for me. If I'm going somewhere that I'm shaky about, it's usually if I'm going somewhere where I know the infrastructure is wild, like I'm just going on vacation. Like Belize, I was kind of working a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit, but I'm just on vacation because there's too much going on. So yeah, I mean,
So do
I can
you
name off all the places, but pretty much everywhere, especially if it's a major city. If it's a major European city, they've got cafes, they've got internet infrastructure, they've got digital nomad communities, they've got meetups, they've got ways for you to get involved, even if you're only there for a couple of weeks. So yeah, any of the major European cities are pretty much going to offer you that.
and you married the travel you were already doing and working remotely. You married that with house sitting as well.
Yes, at a certain point, yeah.
And what was that like?
I think that I will say house sitting is definitely not for everyone. I would encourage people if it's something you're interested in. I mean, try it out, see what there's no harm in it. But it was for me, but one, because I only do cats. I've never had dogs before, so I'm just not comfortable like being responsible for other people's pets, dogs while they're away. So that limits your options a lot if you only do cats. And then, so it was just taking me places that I really didn't want to go, right? Like, I am a very picky traveler, and I'm not really, house sitting taught me that I'm not the, oh, let's just go there. Like, nah, like it got to be something I saw or something I wanted to do. Like, I got to be going there because something I saw seemed like it was going to be a vibe. Like, I found myself going to places when I was house sitting just just to go because there's a house sit open. And for the most part, I mean, I did five, and I they weren't experiences that I wanted to repeat other than the house sit in Amsterdam. And so now I just exclusively house sit for them whenever they go on vacation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's I think that's important to hear stories like that. There are some people who don't have strong inclinations about where they want to go. They just want to explore and, kind of float along. And I think in that in that situation, house sitting might be a really, really good fit because you find yourself uh in some places that you wouldn't normally go. And Jess, you are so right.
Yeah,
You are
I
so
just
right.
saw her comment. That's what made me laugh.
Because this is the place where particular women can go and be appreciated. We never gonna make you feel bad
Holding
for having,
here.
wanting what you want and having your standards for how things are done. We're never gonna make you feel bad like that around here.
The
Okay.
other thing I kind of want
So
to quickly note
go
about
ahead.
that too, if I can, is just that when you're working too, I think when you're working and house sitting, like house sitting is work, y'all. Like it's you got. I mean, depending on how many animals they have and what kind of animals they have and how they have their animals pampered. I mean, I had one house sit with three cats where I was literally having to let the cats in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out all day. I had a ring cam app that they downloaded on my phone. And I'm like in the middle of meetings, and Pepe the cat is trying to, so it's just something to think about because you're not just there on chill mode. You are there taking care of someone's house, taking care of someone's things, making sure it's clean, taking care of their plants, and most of all, making sure that their pet is well cared for. So it's, definitely, there's work involved, and some are more or less work than others, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it was it,
I
that,
think
that was a layer.
that's
That was
fair.
a layer of complexity that honestly, for all of the what I was doing already, I shouldn't have done that. It just added too much turmoil for me, honestly, because I was still
And
trying to
that's
take my girls' trips and everything else that I wanted to do in
trying
between.
to do all the things.
Yeah, it was.
'Cause she hasn't mentioned this, but, like, she's going to Kendrick Lamar concerts, Beyoncé concerts, there's like, she was living some life. So, I don't think I'm not shocked that you have kinda slowed things down and picked a place to be. Okay, so that's actually my next question for you. You started bopping around 2020, but really into 2022, where it wasn't just within the same country. You weren't just bopping around domestically. You started to be in different countries every other week almost, it seemed.
Yeah.
Um, what made you start to even consider the idea of maybe I just need to be in one place?
Yeah, so I thought about this question over the last few days. And today, what came to me was, I think it was always my intention to settle down because when I left Turkey in November, I had residency through March of the following year already. So I was really only planning on coming to the States for Thanksgiving and staying through Christmas. My cousin and I planned a girls' trip to Mexico. I was supposed to be here for 10 days. And then I was supposed to be going back to Turkey in February of 22 to get an apartment and set up shop in Turkey. So, like that was always the plan. Um, and then it just got away from me because, it was like I think I was enjoying the freedom of not having to make a decision. And so when I came to Mexico with my cousin, I was supposed to be going to Oaxaca and then I was going to go back to the States to go back to Turkey. Well, my flight got canceled going to Oaxaca and no kind of information. Valaris was just like, ain't no more flights, sis. And
It be like that sometimes with Valaris.
so, long story short, I was just like, well, I'm here in Mexico. Like, I didn't really need to go back to Turkey. And then I was kind of enjoying like what else there's there to see here in Mexico. So then I was bopping around Mexico. So then I was like, but in my mind, I always was like, I'm going back to Istanbul at some point. And then finally, when I made it back to Istanbul, it was like, oh, somebody invited me to Paris. And then it was like the house sitting started. So 2022, I was going back and forth to Istanbul and just not long enough to like solidify myself there. But like I was kind of looking for an apartment in Istanbul in 2022. So, and that never panned out. And so again, at the beginning of 2023, I was like, I am not doing all this bopping around. I have got to be in one place. I'm not house sitting anymore. I'm not running to every time somebody called me to do something. I am not going to be swayed with every wind of doctrine. And the first person who, as soon as the Beyonce concert was
I was
announced,
gonna say, y'all see I'm laughing at this, right? Because I know how this story went.
as soon as the Beyonce concert was announced, okay, now I'm like, okay, I already kind of knew I was going to go back to Amsterdam to house sit. And now there's the Beyonce concert. So in my mind, again, I'm thinking, we're just going to go back to Amsterdam and we're just going to stay in Amsterdam until you figure out the next thing to do. Because they went on the people I was house sitting for were going on 2 trips but separately. Like one was 3.5 weeks and one was 2.5 weeks, but I needed somewhere to be in the middle. So then it was like, oh, well, it's my birthday, so I should go somewhere for my birthday. Like I'm not already somewhere, but I'm like, oh, I need to go somewhere for my birthday because this is Amsterdam. And I'm like, I already know Amsterdam. So then it was like I wound up in Egypt and then I went back to Amsterdam for the other house sit. And now again, I'm still thinking like, we're just going to settle here until the Beyonce concert because that And in the midst of that, now my cousin and I, who we take one big trip together. And so now we've planned to go to Portugal after in June too. So again, it just like before I knew it, it was like every, six different countries. And between April and June or April and July, I have been to Amsterdam, Egypt, Istanbul, Spain, Madeira, Portugal, and I mean like traveling around these places. So the only
And
thing that stopped it was I had to come back to the States for these workshops with a big project I had going on at my job. And honestly, I was so pissed. But in hindsight, I'm like, that was the only thing that was going to get me to stop moving around like that.
and I want to explore that a little bit because I think you were feeling it, you know, yes, all of these experiences were great and fabulous. Uh, but at the same time, it was starting to wear on you a little bit.
Yes,
But you did what so many of us do, just keep going.
just keep going.
Des- Despite what that voice in your head is telling you, you just kind of keep going. And then when you had to go back to the States and had to stay put for a little bit, uh, did that kind of like make you like kind of have a moment with yourself? Like, is this really what we doing?
Yeah, for sure. Because really, I want to go back to the what you were saying about it wearing on me. So, in terms of things that were starting to wear on me about this lifestyle that people don't really talk about is it is really wear and tear on your body, y'all. Like nobody talks about how it like, and not just like the physical demand on you, but like moving around from countries, lugging bags around. And y'all know I'm luggage heavy when I travel, like
She
completely
is not
unbothered
team
by
one
my
bag.
kids. I
Okay.
see.
She is not carry on only.
No,
Absolutely not.
I've tried. Um, but like, so there's that. And then, I mean, just, there's a certain amount of stress too, right? Like, I had a mentor tell me one time that a lot of times we only associate stress with negative things or things that are hard, but there's a stress that comes along with things you're excited about too. So, like as a nomad without a home base, you're kind of always in this state of enjoying everything, planning for the next thing, looking forward to some more things. And it's really a very arbitrary type of state to find yourself in for a very long time. So, like, the stress of it all starts to show up and manifest in your body in different ways. And I'm over 40, so I'm 42. And I became a nomad at 39. So it's not like, and not to say that that's old, but that's just to say your body as a woman, physically, you start to go through different stuff. And so there's pains that you're experiencing. Meanwhile, you're also moving from different houses. You don't know what kind of mattresses are going to be in your Airbnb or even in your 5-star hotel. You don't know what kind of work setup you're going to have. I mean, there's a reason why people get paid whole jobs to design office workspaces, right? Like, and all of these things over time eventually start to manifest in your body. And now you've got aches and pains, and you're just, again, just trying to push through it. And also, I just started to gain too much weight too. So I was gaining a lot of weight because it was difficult for me to even establish a routine when you're moving from place to place like this. So you can't establish a nutrition plan. I don't even know what they're going to have in a grocery store in this country. They don't even have turkey over here. So you have to be able to pivot on the dime. And again, you're enjoying it, so you're also just like, well, it's okay. But then again, the extra weight then on top of your body everything was just physically starting to show up in me in ways that this was not who I was pre-COVID. So I was like, okay, La, you either have to digital nomad differently or you have to get somewhere and settle down. So yeah, I was already in that mindset by the time I had to come back to the States, because what I had originally intended on doing, what I thought I was going to do, was when the girls trip, my cousin and I left Portugal, I was going to go to Spain. I was going to go to Greece because Greece had this new digital nomad visa. And from what I understood, it was pretty, not difficult to get. And I was like, Greece, I didn't want to go back to Turkey because Turkey has become very difficult to get residence permits, and Turkey has become expensive, like other European countries. So I was like, okay, but then, so I was already in the mindset of, we got to get somewhere. We can't keep moving around like that. So yeah, when I got to the States, I didn't want to be in the States, like I didn't want to be in the States just because
I trust me, I know.
yeah, my lifestyle now, I enjoy being in the United States, but my lifestyle now is so different that I don't have a car there. It's difficult for me to get around unless I'm sharing a car with my mom, and everything's so far apart. So I'm used to being able to hop on the train or just walk to the grocery store, get what I need, stuff like that. So, it was difficult for me, but at the same time, I was like, you got to do what you got to do for your job. And it was necessary. But it allowed me to establish like these routines, and it also allowed me the space to figure out, okay, now what are we actually going to do?
Okay. F Doctor asked, wait. Here's the question. Curious as to how we define rest, because in this story you're telling us, there's not a lot of rest happening.
No. I mean, the thing is, I think that I thought I was resting. So this is a great question, because and I'm going to answer kind of on the fly. I don't really have like a thought out answer, but I will say that what I have realized rest is not for me. Like I was doing all this running around, but like in between, like, I was chilling out on the boat on a day, having a little yacht day, having some spa days, and I was thinking, okay, because I'm having these moments where I'm incorporating self-care, this is restful. But like it just wasn't enough. Like I was, so now honestly for me, rest literally means I am sitting somewhere doing nothing, and I'm not in between things. So like I'm not planning a trip, I'm not getting ready to go anywhere, I'm not getting ready to have company. Like I'm just going to Pilates, going to the beach, going to work, talking to my friends, and sleeping a lot. Like napping and sleeping a lot. That's rest for me now.
I've been very disrespectful to rest, because there's a lot of, very much, I don't do what I don't want to do. However, I have not been very good about honoring when my body is telling me you should take a nap. Because I would say something like, I'm tired, but I'm like, oh, I got a call at this time or what have you, and then the day would go by, I'd pull an all dayer and not have rested, and then I'm exhausted, and then that exhaustion just kind of builds and builds and builds. And so I'm trying to get better about, like, I went ahead and I followed Ivana's example. Like, she has on her calendar nap. You cannot book her during her siesta. So I've done that.
I
And
love
but then I would ignore the reminder that it was time to take a nap. Or what I'm really good for doing is saying, well, I'm not really tired now. And then 30 minutes later, it's like I should have taken the nap, but now it's too late. So I'm trying to be better about honoring those things, because I deserve it. Like, I shouldn't be treating me like that.
Yeah.
So
And
so
we
yeah.
really, really need sleep, like from just like a physical wellness standpoint. Like we need to sleep, our mind needs to rest. And the only thing I will say about that too is like I think the other thing I've realized is that there's two components to rest. Like I think I was mastering the physical body resting thing, but I wasn't mastering like bringing my mind to a space of rest. So my mind not being restful was really the thing making me feel so exhausted, I think. Because even when I'm at the spot, I'm thinking about, oh, I gotta book tickets for this, or my Airbnb is up in 2 days and I still haven't figured out where I'm going next. Like, what are we gonna do? And what are the, there's always so I had to learn how to I had to really start like leaning into meditating and just figuring out how to quiet my mind so that I could be at rest. And that was almost impossible for me to do, bopping around, because you're always in the midst of trying to plan the next thing.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you that because you have to it's a perpetual thing. You have to keep going, you have to keep moving. And so what you just said about, like, yeah, the Airbnb is up in 2 days and I haven't found another place, or I haven't figured out what city I'm going to next. And so even if you aren't actively contemplating those things, they don't go away. There's still a portion of your brain
Yeah.
being dedicated to that, and that does wear on you.
Yeah.
So you spent some time in the US, and really, because I remember when you said, y'all, this year I think I'm gonna settle down. And I will be honest, I didn't believe it. And then and then I saw a post about a lease, and I was like, what? She getting a lease somewhere? So, how did you decide, okay, this is where I want to have a home base? Like, did you have a process? Is it just that a place spoke to you, or is it something else?
Yeah. So again, twofold. On the one hand, I will say that it was very much so God was like, what are you still looking for? Because leading up to I was so drained, because then also when I got back to the States, I was going back and forth. I was still bopping around. I was still bopping around because I was going back and forth to Michigan from Florida to work. And then I would tack on these little trips on the front end
Because
and the
there
back
always has to be a trip. Like I
end.
told y'all, she can't sit
Yeah.
down either.
I mean, because if I'm going to Michigan, why wouldn't I go to Chicago? Like,
Exactly.
so, and that was exhausting. So by the time I got to November, like October was the last time that we did it. November, I came to Mexico City, and like I just instantly felt the weight lift, because Mexico is just always a place that, you just feel, I don't know, lighter. Um, and so that was kind of the first when I was thinking like, well, maybe I should explore being in Mexico City. But I knew I wanted the beach. And so what I started doing between November and December was my cousin and I. So I'd had some dental work done here in Playa in March of last year. I had some implants done. And so implants, they do the first part, and then you have to wait for it to heal up for like 4 months. And then you come back to get the actual tooth. So I was already planning on coming here in December to get the implants finished. And I had told my cousin, I said, let's do a little girls trip for like a few days before I have to have the dental surgery. And so leading up to that, and between November, when I left for Mexico City, and when I was between going to Playa, I just was like, okay, like you have to set an intention for being in Playa, because I really didn't like Playa the first time that I came. And I think I was just exposed to a part of Playa that wasn't my vibe for real. So this time I was like, I knew, one, not to make a long story, but I'm kind of long-winded, but I promise it's gonna all come together. But like by this time now, like I said, there had been so much wear and tear on my body that in October I got a nutrition coach, and like I had already started being like hardcore into my working out, because I was like, physically, I have to feel better. I was having problems with my knees. I was having plantar fasciitis. I was having stuff going on with my spine. And I was like, I have to feel better. So when I knew I was coming here in December for 2 weeks, I was like, okay, we have to think through, how do you maintain your fitness regimen and your nutrition regimen while you're there? So that, and also I was like, you have to get yourself centered enough to where you and God can really talk about what's supposed to be happening next, because you are not feeling good in Florida anymore. Like, I love my parents, I love my family, I just was starting to feel like this is not like physically, this is not good for me anymore. So because I had to be intentional about the fitness regimen, that meant I had to already move a certain way through the city. So that exposed me to a completely different life in Playa. And then also having the intention of, okay, we're going to sit with ourselves, we're going to meditate, we're going to really lean into our spiritual practices to get some direction for what's supposed to be happening next. And it was just like for that whole the 2 weeks that I was here, I ended up getting sick. Long story short, I was here for a month. So I was like, but it allowed me to move through Playa like I just lived here. And I found the wellness communities and all of those things that I needed to feel good. And I was just at a high vibration. Like, I know these are things that people say that sound really kooky sometimes, but like, I literally energetically was just on a frequency that God was literally telling me stuff. I could say I wanted something, and the next day, literally, resources would appear. So I was coming to the end of the trip. And I was like, okay, we really have to sit down now. And I was about to start making a list of like, okay, here's the criteria that you need in the city. This is what you need, to be able to find. This kind of what place, this the budget, blah, blah, blah. And I was about to kind of make it a whole exercise. And I just audibly heard the spirit like, what more are you expecting to feel? Like, what are you not feeling right now that you want to be feeling? And everything about how I was feeling was perfect. So I was like, I don't really know what else I'm looking for. Like, yeah, on paper, another city probably would have checked all the boxes for me. Like, oh, there's no culture here in Playa. Oh, there's not this. There's not that. Oh, I'm going to get bored. The party scene, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, it's touristy. Like all these things that I was trying to make negative. But at the end of the day, I was like, you literally are glowing different. Like I was in my Instagram stories and
The chat been saying that all night.
people had been, people were literally like, you should just move there. You should just move there. Like this is where I was at. And so it just seemed like a no-brainer for me. And I have that kind of trust in God that like, and the God in me that like, if it's all lining up, what else are you actually looking for? And so that's really how I came to find myself in Playa again and loving it. And then, so I said I was going to start looking for an apartment. And it was just like one thing after the other. Like as soon as I made up my mind that I was going to be here, the very next day I met a guy who had just bought a place. He introduced me to his realtor in a restaurant randomly. And just everything started to unfold. And then I was looking for a place when I came back in February. And I had a list. I had contacted some people. And literally I arrived on a Sunday. And the very next Sunday, I was paying my deposit on my apartment. Like it was that easy. So it's just everything has been happening in divine order for me to know that like this is the place. Just I'm at a place now where even in my travels, there's a lot of beautiful things to see. There's a lot of wonderful things to experience. But at the end of the day, I'm really about how am I feeling energetically in this space, because if it doesn't suit me, it really doesn't matter how much everyone else loved it or whatever. It's just not for me. So I'm just trying to stay in that vein, even with everything that I'm planning next is like, the first question just being like, how do I want to feel? And then deciding, do I need to go somewhere else to feel that or not?
You talked about having to move differently. And I think that's not something a lot of people talk about when they are either talking about their digital nomad lifestyle. Like I will often say when I do videos about like country shopping and picking your place, or when you've gone on vacation, you love this place, and now you're like, oh, could I live there? We always talk about like, well, being on vacation and living in a place is very different. But what you've highlighted is the digital nomad experience is not exactly like living there either. There's a, you know, from where you are choosing to stay, the things that you need in a particular neighborhood or apartment and that kind of stuff. That's all different because the way you live your life when this is the place you're going to be versus I'm going to be here for a while and then I'm going to have to pack up all my stuff
Mm-hmm.
and move on to the next place. That is different.
It's
And
very
so, because you've been to Playa before. And
twice.
so approaching it this way, I mean, I'm not shocked it came out with a different result. But had you come in much the same way you had previously, maybe, maybe you wouldn't have found what you found.
Yeah, I don't think that I would have. And that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Yeah, there has to be, I mean, well, I don't want to say there has to be some intention, right? You can have some unintentional travels. Those are sometimes the best ones. But just know that that unintentionality can leave you open to whatever kind of experience that might
You
not
can
necessarily be what you were looking for.
I don't think you can get what it is you really want if you are not intentional in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be a big thing, it doesn't have to be a whole production. But being intentional, you know, for yourself, I think it makes you move in a different way. But it also kind of like primes the universe in a
yes.
certain way because you've made this intention and you said this is what I'm trying to do, so the universe is trying to accommodate that. And if you're not intentional, it's very hard for the universe to give you what you want.
100%, 100%. And what you said about, realizing that being a digital nomad is very different than living there. And even I'm just fine. Like now I've been here 3 weeks, like living here. And even I found this out. Like I expected it to be so much easier to transition because I'm like, you've been here a million times, like you've been here as a nomad. And it's shockingly different. Like just the things that you need are different. Like, this, like you just said, when you're only going to be somewhere for a few weeks or something, like you don't really care about the dishes and the sheets and, the fact that there's not a sharp knife or getting plants and all this stuff. And then, but when you live somewhere, you're like, you want your favorite things. You want, so where do you go get that? And now it's like, okay, I'm going to be here too long to not have, a masseuse or all the other things you need. So now you're having to move through the community even differently to find the resources that you need. So it is very, very different. I think being a digital nomad in a place gives you a good idea of what living there can be like, but I really think you probably need to be there at least 90 days. And if you're in a touristy city, you probably need to be there across tourist season and non-tourist season just to feel the vibes when nobody's there. But it's difficult if
That
you've
is
been there a couple of weeks. Like you're gonna run
that
around.
is important
Yeah,
because Playa del Carmen, like Mexico City, there are tourists here, but it is not a touristy place in the way that Playa del Carmen is. And
right.
so I would imagine the experience is very different when it's low season versus when it is high season and you're trying to, like go about your everyday life.
Yeah.
Um, are you noticing any big differences or any differences at all? They don't have to be big with your lifestyle, like the life you were living before and the life you've been living over the last 3 weeks, because you're still very early in this process.
Yeah. I think that I mean I still feel very, very joyful. Like I still have the excitement of it all, of the whole thing. But I feel well, I'm coming off my cousin being here for 4 days and we were doing the most. So I was gonna say I feel much more rested, but today I don't really. But generally
I was
speaking,
gonna say y'all was in the streets the whole time.
literally
Uh,
speaking, over the last 3 weeks, I do feel like one, I'm in my own space with my own things. And there is a groundedness that comes along with knowing this is my space. I'm not borrowing this space from someone for a short. I mean, like technically I'm renting, but like it's my space.
it's
And these
your
are my
space.
these are my things. And So that's very calming for me. Like that feels also, I think, the stability of knowing that like I'm not going to have to figure out where I'm going in a month or 2 months or 3 months or 9 months or a year, like not having to figure out those things is just giving me a lot of mental peace. It was when I say it was wearing on me, y'all, I mean like it was wearing on me, like mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like there were days I was just in tears because I was tired. Like I'm tired. I'm tired and I still got to figure out where I'm going, how to get there, where I'm going to go when I get there, what they got to eat over there. Like it would just have me in tears sometimes because it was so heavy. So honestly, the biggest thing, I just feel grateful. Like I feel I'm about to start crying. Like I just feel grateful every day to wake up in my own space. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm not having to figure out what language or how I get here. Like I know where everything is. I can walk out my front door and know exactly where to go without GPS and stuff. So like that's something for me, like for to go for almost 4 years without having that was just like it was fun until it wasn't. So like I'm just super grateful because like I just have been waiting for this time when I was going to get to just not be so busy.
There is a lot of mental work that goes into that I don't think we think about, like the impermanence of the digital nomad lifestyle. And I don't want anybody to think by any means that like I'm here to bash the lifestyle or what have you. What I am here for is for Black women to do what they need to do in order to live the life that they want. And so that might mean there is a season of your life where you are bopping around and you are just having a blast. But that may also mean that there's a season of your life where you are sitting still somewhere. We're not assigning a value to either one of them. But I do think, and one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is it's very hard to communicate like that cost to you physically and mentally when we're just consuming things through social media. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Because it's
so
all
it is,
looking fabulous.
yeah. I don't want anybody, or if there is somebody watching this who, when what you're hearing Lila say sounds so familiar. And maybe you have been telling yourself, well, if I go and I settle down someplace, I failed at this digital nomad thing. And I don't believe that's possible, because you do it while you want to do it. And then when you don't want to do it, you don't do it anymore.
Yeah. On your terms.
Yeah, I
On your
think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And I think that also what I would say is, it doesn't have to be this exhausting, right? I think that if I had put some different boundaries and guardrails around it, and then just going back to the intentionality thing, like I was just enjoying, my rising sign is a Sagittarius. So the Sagittarius in me wants to freestyle my entire life. So, but the Taurus in me wants to sit down and be cozy. So I think that I was just enjoying the free flow of it all. And if I had it to do differently, I would definitely have said like, let's put some boundaries around like, okay, we go somewhere and we stay 3 months. If you can't stay 3 months there, then you should just go there for vacation. But if you can't stay there 3 months, you should not pack up all your stuff and go set up shop there. Like for me, I think that would be the thing now, even because I didn't have a home base. So I think that's one thing. Just maybe if you're going to do it, maybe without a home base, extending the amount of time that you'll be in one place can help reduce some of that like exhaustion. I think saying no, like just knowing how to say no, which is hard for us busybodies, right? Especially when it comes to travel and your homies
Travel.
are there. So that's always going to be difficult. But I think if you know, so now for me, this is the other thing about settling down and having a place is that because I know I like to do that, I also know that in order for me to pick up and go here for 3 days and go here for 5 days and go over here for 10 days and blah, 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 at some point I need to be able to come back home. So the other thing I would say is, if I were going to be a digital nomad in some capacity ever again, I would definitely have a home base of my own somewhere, not even a place that I rent out or anything, but just my house. And or I would make sure my stays were much longer than days or weeks.
And I have to ask about this. You mentioned like you did not have a home base because when you left, you gave up your place to stay. And where did all of your stuff go?
So I sold and gave away almost all of it. And initially, I kept a storage unit of just enough stuff to spin up a 1 bedroom. Like, if this just turned out to be the most terrible idea I've ever had, I could come back home. I got pots, pans, a couch, and a bed, and I can go move in somewhere and we'll start over. Biggest thing I regret, I wasted 2-3 years of paying for a storage unit that was increasing in price every year for some stuff that ultimately, when I went back to Michigan in April of last year, I literally had to pay somebody $800 to come get the stuff and throw it away.
And I don't bring this up to like poke at the wound, but for those of you watching this, I want you to learn from her mistake. And I want you to really think long and hard about getting a storage unit. Because I know it's a very hard thing because we've been raised in a society where it's about the accumulation of stuff. And when you don't have stuff, that kind of lessens your value as a person.
Right.
Because we not having stuff, that means you're poor, and being poor is a bad thing. Like there's all these things we have going on. However, I can't, outside of somebody I know who left, hated it, and came back within a year. Outside of that, I cannot think of a single story where somebody was like, I was so glad I had that storage, and the thousands of dollars I spent keeping it was worth it to me.
No.
Because I'm going to go out here. I know you like nice things, but I'm going to go out here on a limb and I'm going to say what you paid in storage probably exceeded the value of the contents of that storage unit.
By far. By far. I mean, by far. It just
Because we get
doesn't make sense.
in
It
the,
just doesn't make any
if
sense.
I come back, I don't want to have to start over. I don't want to have to start from scratch.
Right.
Did any of that stuff make it to this apartment?
Not a single item. Not one item. Not one item.
And
No.
to add to it, she had to pay, on top of that, she had to pay somebody to get rid of that stuff.
Come get rid of it. I couldn't even just tell the storage unit like, hey, y'all just throw it out. No, I literally had to pay somebody to come get the stuff. Like, no, in my mind, I was like, but at the same time, I was so happy to finally let it go, because at the same time, I feel like, you know what? Like, there is some intrinsic value to if it gives you a little bit of peace to hold on to the stuff. I mean, if your piece is worth $200 a month or whatever it's going to cost, I mean, and you can afford it. I mean, I'm not going to say don't do it, but be working towards being able to let it go, because you're just going to look back and be like, I should let that stuff go. And then I think the tough thing for people too is like the memorabilia stuff, and like just digitize everything. And if there's like something that's really sacred to you, like, okay, the one thing, but the other stuff, it's just taking up space. Funny enough, my landlord is preparing to go travel the States in an RV. So he's getting rid of all this stuff right now. And we were just having this conversation last night about how you just get attached to it because it has sentimental value and all these other things. But then you're like, it's just taking up a lot of space and now it's costing me money. And it was the effort of just having to go over there. I remember when I saw you and Rashida doing her storage unit, I was like, that made me not even want to have to fool with mine. I was like, oh my God, that's going to be me. It's dusty and
It,
dirty. Oh,
I
yeah.
have put in the chat, and I will add this to the description of the video. I did a video a few months ago, earlier this year, about decluttering and downsizing, because you are right. We have our sentimental attachments, and I'm not telling anybody don't be attached. However, you really have to have a frank moment with yourself about, I feel this way about this thing, but this is the life I want to lead. Can this fit into this new life? You know, I had to make a decision back in 2015, 2016, when I knew I was leaving and I had to sell my books. And I was like, for the lifestyle that I want to have and the ability to move with my three checked bags, I can't own physical books. Or if I buy them, I have to buy them knowing I am going to have to give this away.
Day. Yeah.
And so my attachment to physical books was not worth the freedom I'd have to give up by staying put. So, like, you have to decide how it fits into the new life. And, I saw somebody's comment about, well, my art is in storage and my plan is to move it. That's fine. I'm not telling folks not to have things, but here's the other place people get caught up. They try to be cheap. You can be you can be cheap or you can have your stuff. Like you can't have both.
Yeah.
So for everything there is a cost, and I believe this is true for everything in life. It can be a physical cost, it can be a mental cost, it can be a actual monetary cost. But to have what you want in life, you are going to have to be willing to pay the price for that thing. And what I know from doing this as long as I've been doing it, for the vast majority of you, you do not need that storage unit.
Yeah. And also thinking about cost. The other thing about the stuff you put in storage that you think is going to be, oh, when I get my apartment in such and such place, I'm gonna ship it there. Y'all, I don't know if you're aware of what the cost is to ship stuff internationally and whether or
People
not
aren't.
it's even gonna get there and be intact. You probably not shipping that stuff. You know, yeah,
That's
like
why I say,
that's the other thing.
and this is a lesson Rashida learned, because part of the reason we went to her storage unit was to get her art and to get some things that had some really strong sentimental value. But to get them here was not a cheap endeavor. And it has to be worth it to you. And you have to like have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah. And then you kind of got to be real sure, like, okay, Rashida, she knows she's going to be in Mexico City. You got to be real sure that after you go through the time and energy and money of getting it there, that's where you're planning to actually stay for long enough to have made the whole exercise worth it. And maybe you will, maybe you won't.
And as y'all know, I am the friend that asked you those questions. So as we were in the FedEx place, getting things, hearing these horribly high numbers to get her stuff here. And I was like, and so what happens when you move again? Is this worth it to you to have to pay more money so that this stuff goes with you to the next place? And if the answer is yes, the answer is yes. And there is no judgment about it. But you have to like be real about it. You do.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. If y'all have any specific questions for Lila, maybe about Playa del Carmen, ask those now because we're not going to hold on to her all night. My last question: what was the best thing about the time you spent nomading?
Ooh. The best thing about nomading is just the freedom, like not being attached to anything or anywhere or anyone is just like a very liberating experience. And then also knowing that, like, today I woke up in Amsterdam and tomorrow I'm going to wake up in Egypt. Like, like that's very exciting. And then like just the new places you go. And I like that's the best thing about it for sure. Is just constantly being in this state of like awe. Like, oh, this is new. This is new. This is new. So that's the flip side of the downside of that stress. But like the upside of it is like, wow, like you're so free. You're so free. You don't have a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of stuff weighing you down. You can reinvent yourself in all these places if you want to. You can be whoever you want to be. Like it's just a very liberating thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of people ask about when is the low season in Playa del Carmen?
Yeah. So my understanding, so every time I've been here during high season. So what I understand from the friends I have here is that low season doesn't start until like May. And then it will go until probably about December, and things pick up like right before Christmas.
Okay. So mostly I was going to say what should be rainy season, but I don't
Rainy
know.
season, yeah. Rainy
Okay.
season, hurricane season, and then, it'll clear up like November.
Okay. All right. How did you find your apartment?
So I did end up using a realtor, but I started my search on Facebook Marketplace, just to kind of try to get an idea of like what's out there, what our prices like, and to try to see the direct sellers from the realtors who had multiple listings. I also, because I had been here so many times, I knew where I wanted to be, so I would kind of just walk around and see if I saw any for rent signs. But between those two things, what panned out is one of the people I contacted on Facebook Marketplace ended up being an actual realtor, and she showed me several properties.
Okay. And if anybody is watching this and has watched the video I made most recently about my most recent apartment hunting experience, and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound so bad. Mexico City is a whole different barrel of apples. Okay. Uh, it
Much,
it
much,
is,
much, much bigger.
yes, it is just very different. So that's something to keep in mind if you are considering Mexico, that if you need to consume content from people who are in the specific part of Mexico that you are considering, because I see a lot of people who have spent time in Playa and then decide, oh, I want to live in Mexico City for a little bit. And they get here and are shocked that things do not work the same way. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Um, what country did you expect the least from, but pleasantly surprised you?
Ooh. Expected the least from. Okay, so I would say probably Scotland. I didn't really know what to expect. I saw some pictures. Again, this was a place I was really just going because there was a house sit there. And but it was so beautiful. I mean, just pretty. Like if you're in nature, I'm a nature person. So like just rolling hills and water and mountains and islands and the Highland cows with the bangs. Like it was just like I would go back to, like, if I weren't working full time, I would go back to Scotland and just like RV around for like a month or two because it was just gorgeous. And I just felt very peaceful there. I think another place would be Prague. I didn't know what to expect in Prague either. We were just going to see Kendrick. And I adored Prague. I was so surprised at Prague because there was so much music everywhere. There was so much live music everywhere and so much Black music everywhere. I mean, like blues, jazz, New Orleans music, pop music, R&B, Motown. It was crazy everywhere we went. We went to so many more shows in addition to the Kendrick show. So that was really shocking, but like just it was such super vibey. The architecture was amazing. The food was really good at certain places, maybe not the check-in food. The check-in food was good, but I just wouldn't eat it every day. It's very heavy. But that it there surprised me also. And then probably Madeira Island. So it's a little Portuguese island kind of off the coast of Africa, actually. And I just needed to go somewhere and be peaceful for like, 10 days. And I didn't know what to expect. People have been saying it was like the Hawaii of Europe. And I've never been to Hawaii, so I really didn't have any context for that. But it just turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful place. Like very, very beautiful. Again, I'm a nature person. So if there's natural stuff there that's really beautiful that I didn't expect to see, I'm like, oh, wow. So that would be my top three, probably.
Okay. And the last question, it's kind of, we've had several people ask different versions of this, about like, if you weren't in Playa del Carmen, you weren't in Mexico, where else would you be? Where's the place that like, you're like, I still need to get to this place?
Amsterdam. I would be in Amsterdam. Honestly, ideally, my goal between now and 2025 is to have a place here and there, and then I can spend November to May here, and then spend May to November in Europe.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you again for another excellent conversation. I'm so appreciative of you being here. Thank y'all, those of you who are joining us live. Thank y'all for coming. If you want to help me out, because YouTube ain't been liking me much lately and not been showing my stuff to people. So if you want to hit a thumbs up on this video, that would be very helpful. Or if you're like, I didn't know Adelia was live today. Maybe it's because you're not subscribed and you need to subscribe to the channel. And before we let you go, I'm saying this to help put some pressure on you. Lila is revamping her YouTube channel. So there is a link in the description of this video, or if you're just on YouTube and you want to just search Lala the Bougie Bohemian, you can find her channel, you can subscribe, and then follow her fabulous adventures, because this woman don't do nothing if it ain't fabulous. I tell you that. All
There's
right,
some
good night.
non-fabulous stuff. The non-fabulous stuff just doesn't end up on Instagram. That's all. It's not always fabulous.